So now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter, Amy Stephenson, a public education coordinator with the Alzheimer Society of Durham region. Amy has been volunteering and working with seniors for the past 6 years. Prior to her work with the Alzheimer Society, she completed her master's in aging and health at Queen's University and a bachelor's in kinesiology from Western University. When not working, she likes to spend time outside, hiking, running, or paddling. We are very lucky to have her with us tonight, so without further ado, I will turn it over to Amy to begin her presentation.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you to everyone who has joined this evening. I'm so happy that you are all engaged with wanting to learn more about how to support your brain health, and specifically how we can use technology and online services. As we understand, it is a time of technology. This past year has certainly launched us all to become techies, whether we wanted it or not. And so tonight I'll be diving into the world of virtual fun that is now available and different avenues within that. And please do type in any questions in the chat bar, or again, there will be a Q&A at the end. I would be happy to field any specific questions you have. To start things off, I do also want to send a special thank you because even if you don't realize it, you're supporting the Alzheimer Society by being here today to help to raise awareness for supporting brain health. I would love to invite you all to join us for our Walk for Alzheimer's. You can do so following the link that's on the screen now. And this walk is a big fundraiser for us to help us to continue our mission to improve the lives of individuals living with dementia and their care partners. So I'm actually going to start with a question of what is technology? And so I have a couple answers that you can choose from. You can also type your answer into the chat if you feel technology is not defined by any of the suggestions that I have provided. For those of you that are new to the poll feature, you can select any of the 4 options presented and then press the blue submit button at the bottom. I'll give it a few more seconds for people to make their decision. Wonderful. So I'm just going to close it. And it looks like we actually had a bit of a tie. So our definition of technology was anything with a screen and smart things. And so I'm really happy that no one said a pain in the behind, because we know sometimes technology can feel like that. And so I do have a little bit of the technical definition of what is technology. And it's the application of specific knowledge or scientific knowledge for practical purposes, especially in industry, which is very broad. But I highlight this because it helps us to understand that technology is quite broad. That, as we sort of said, technology is a computer. Technology is our phones, specifically those smartphones when we think of. You might even have a smart watch or a TV or even our cars. But we also want to expand that to something that our glasses are a piece of technology, because it's the application of science to improve it for a practical purpose. I know without my glasses, I wouldn't be able to see very well. And so that is technology at use. I introduce this mostly to help to take away some of the stigma that sometimes we feel related to technology, where it's this challenging, big, messy topic that we don't always want to get into. And so today I'm going to be focusing a lot on the use of technology for games or entertainment, because I like to think technology can be fun. And dovetailing that with games and technology are a great way to help support brain health. We know that brain games can help sharpen certain thinking skills that tend to wane with age, such as processing speed, planning skills, reaction time, decision making, and also help to improve short-term memory. And this has been shown in studies published in 2016 in the International Psychogeriatric Journal. We also know that even regardless of what type of game we're playing, it's really that fundamental of challenging your brain. And online technology really gives us a multitude of avenues to challenge our brain and to learn something new. Whether it's a foreign language, a musical instrument, all of these things help to stimulate our brain and help to either improve the symptoms of cognitive impairment or help to build up that robustness and neuroplasticity in the brain to help to delay the onset of symptoms. And so this is when we start to think about, okay, well, if I'm going to be playing games, games should be fun. And so once again, I'm just going to ask you, what is your version of fun? And we highlight this because when we think of fun and meaningful activities, and we're really aiming for that cognitive improvement, it can seem like there's a lot of challenges of what exactly works best and what should I be doing. And we like to highlight what words or what is fun for you, because oftentimes the best way to choose a brain game is choosing whatever is fun to you. And so when we're looking at our results, a lot of people think reading is fun, which it definitely can be. Understanding that board games, cards, trivia, reading, sports, exercise, these can all be domains in which we can challenge our brain. And while it can often feel as though, as of late, a lot of these avenues aren't available because of certain restrictions, but there is a multitude of supports that we can find online. I do also want to say from the get-go that sometimes using technology can be frustrating. And we've all had those moments, and it's important to recognize, especially if you're helping to support someone who's living with cognitive impairment, to take things slow and to break them down into reasonable portions. So that if someone is getting frustrated or they have a fatigue or declining energy level while they're engaging in these games, it's best to break them up into smaller parts to keep motivations high and to maintain a positive outlook. And so today I'm going to cover a variety of online tools, going from some low-tech gadgets up to some higher-tech tools. So starting off rather low-tech with some classic activities, and they're classic for a reason, and reading a normal book would fall into this. But we also know that for some people, they've read through their library, or they're looking for something with bigger text, or the idea of an audiobook to support their reading. If you're interested more in this, the Ajax Public Library offers resources both in print and online. So you could get an audiobook online perhaps, or you could get some print resources on learning a new language. And sometimes it can even be an adult coloring book or doing some riddles. We specifically like to highlight some of the low stress. Well, these are not as cognitively challenging. And sometimes we think, oh, we really have to be sort of straining our mind, but also being creative and letting yourself engage in activity that is fun for you is still going to have a lot of brain boosting effects. As a bit of a start, you can type the answer into the chat of what are the answers to some of these riddles. And I'll give you a moment to think. And again, riddles like this are easily available online. I got these ones from www.riddles.com, and highlight the fact that there is such a breadth of options available online that you can find something that can suit your taste, whatever your preferences are. And so for anyone looking at these down, what do we think this box says? I'll let you think about it. And I'll give you the answer to this one. This is the 7 C's. And maybe we'll come back to this at the end during the question time. But you can see how this is not, it's just a different way to look at things and to make your brain think in a little bit of a different way. Thinking about using technology a little bit more, there's a variety of programs offered through the phone. And so there are Senior Center Without Walls programming that is offered by the City of Ajax that can provide meaningful and engaging phone conversations. There's also the opportunity just to call a friend, and recognizing that this too can help to have a brain boosting effect and is a good way to leverage technology, and whether this is a phone call or a Zoom call, to have meaningful interactions through those social connections. So while sometimes we don't always recognize that calling a friend would be good for our brain, it really can be. Posted on the screen now is also the helpline for the East York Region, North Durham, Ontario Health Team, where you can call to find about more programs or services, as well as the HR Public Library that also has phone services available. Moving on a little bit, and if there's are any questions, please let me know in the chat. Thinking about some of those online games. And so when I say online games, I mean a game that's going to require an internet connection. And as I said with some of the other things, that online is almost endless. And this endless option can seem overwhelming. And so thinking about finding games that would be the best tool for you for a brain boosting activity. Again, I want you to focus on what's fun for you. If you're supporting someone who's living with dementia, it can be good to choose failure-free games. These can help to minimize frustration and create a safe space. This could be something like a creative game that's involved in drawing or painting. Or with a lot of online games, you can choose the level of difficulty, which can help to create a more user-friendly experience. This might mean choosing a chess opponent that is novice rather than an expert, and working your skills up to there, or working your skills up from there. When we're looking to think about what game style works best for us, and what game or what activity we could do consistently, there's a few things to help narrow it down. We might want to consider what type of game we want to engage in. And so maybe we're thinking we want a multiplayer or a single player game. Some fun things with multiplayer games is that you can connect with individuals wherever they are. This can be another great way to build social connections, whether you're connecting with your neighbor, your grandson, or someone around the world. These games would be considered synchronous, these games can be synchronous or asynchronous. If they're synchronous, it means all the players are active at the same time. So it typically works best when it has been pre-planned to do these activities together. This would be considered like a game of tennis, where someone makes a shot and you wait as the other player immediately takes their turn. Other games are asynchronous, meaning one person goes and then you wait until the other side makes the move. This can be a good style when playing with loved ones in different time zones. And it's kind of like playing Scrabble, where after your turn, you walk away from the table and the other player comes back when it works for them. This can be a good option for individuals who like to take their time and work through options and reduce frustrations. There's also benefits for any of these if you choose to play against a virtual opponent. This would kind of be like playing tennis with a tennis ball feeder. You don't need to wait for someone else, and your opponent never gets tired. And as I've mentioned, you can also change the level of difficulty. This can be important for anyone who's living with a dementia diagnosis and could find it frustrating to play games with a higher level, more difficult challenges. And being able to adjust that so that it meets a person where they are can make it more stimulating because they're able to more fully engage in it. Playing against a virtual player also helps remove any time pressures. I'd also like to just highlight that some brain boosting activities that we can engage with online might not be games at all, or might not be the games that we think of. So as I've said, that there could be trivia or solitaire, which would be a solitaire game. I would also like to add music. And while it's not a game, it can be extremely relaxing, energizing, and an uplifting overall experience. And there are a host of websites where you can listen to your favorite playlist or find an old song in just a few clicks. YouTube and Spotify will even create playlists for you based on songs either that you've typed in or that you can create yourself. Music is a great way to help stimulate your brain and engage in fond memories and help to reduce feelings of anxiety. This time, I'd like to ask what online games you find yourself engaging with most. And maybe if you aren't playing a lot of games, maybe thinking of what games you think or why or how you could incorporate games into your day. A lot of times we don't always think about incorporating games into our day, but in a time where we can be feeling increasingly stressed or feeling like we've got too much time on our hands, having a structured way to engage our brain through a game in a way that's going to be fun and engaging can be a great way to help to reduce stress. And as I've mentioned, engage your brain and have a sort of a brain boosting effect. We've got a couple answers coming in. We like Sudoku, Solitaire, Taboo, Euchre. Ooh, Euchre. For me personally, euchre is not a relaxing game because when I play with my family, it gets very stressful. And it's great to recognize sort of what works with you. We've got crosswords. And these might be things that we all take for granted, or we don't consider that these have important brain boosting effects. Or maybe having looked at them through online avenues to help to ensure that they're sustainable, making sure that we're never going to run out of a crossword, or can make it more convenient to be able to play on a mobile device. Thank you to all those answers that were submitted. Next up, I'm going to talk a little bit about apps. And an app is short form for an application. And sometimes you can play most games on an app, but you can also use an app to run a specific program. And there's apps for just about everything, whether it's grocery shopping, tackling the stock market, or a Magic 8-Ball app. There's a variety of tools that you can use online. And with such a large volume, it can be a bit intimidating, once again, to sort of start and pick through what would be the best for you. I'm going to highlight some of the apps that we can use for that brain training and that engagement. I will also highlight that with the volume of apps available, you have the option to pick and choose, which means I encourage you to try out a couple apps. Most apps have free versions that you can try out and see if you like the content. If you don't, there's no harm in deleting an app and trying a different version. If the app has a paid version and the ads are impairing your ability to really enjoy it, it might be worth purchasing that app. If you do so, I would avoid storing credit card information on your computer or on your phone to protect your security or to increase security. And so we've talked a lot about fun apps, but I'm also going to highlight that there are certain apps like LinkedIn Learning, which you can access through the EdGec Public Library, that offer specific learning content. On LinkedIn Learning, there's a broad scope of courses that you can take to further engage your learning and have a more guided learning experience rather than doing independent research on your own. Taking courses like this on topics that are interesting to you are great ways to learn new things, which again is going to help to build up that neuroplasticity and helps to bolster our cognitive reserve. Understanding that our brain, like a muscle, will be strengthened the more we use it. This means that if we exercise our brain and try new things and challenge ourselves every day, we're going to build up that neurocognitive reserve. And I like to describe that as you're laying down road work. The more roads that are in our brain, the more networks and different ways there are to connect. That means that in the case of any cognitive impairment, such as dementia, which works to break down some roads, that if you lose some roads, you will be less impacted by that if you know you have other detours to work around any of those losses. And that's a very brief overview, but trying to explain a little bit of the technicalities of why it's so important to engage our brain. Now, if you are supporting someone who's living with dementia, I would like to recommend that you look for Acto Dementia. This is a website with an ever-expanding list of user-friendly apps that are specifically recommended for individuals living with dementia for touchscreens. All of these apps have been vetted by researchers, and as the group is unaffiliated with any developers, they provide unbiased recommendations. You can search games based on genre, features, or different features to find something that sparks your interest. So again, you can find that website by just typing in actodementia.com. I'm wondering if there's any questions that anyone has about any of the content that I said, or if there was any questions that people had about any of the sort of brain games that they have seen online, and if they had any questions about those. So while it's not typed into the chat, I do want to spend a second, because it normally does come up, talking about sites like Luminosity, or sites that are specifically stated to train your brain. And while, yes, if you do Luminosity or any of these other sort of curated brain training games, you will get very good at those games. And that does give you a way to stimulate your brain, but they provide no further benefit than doing any other sort of online activity that's going to challenge you. Their games are not specifically curated to, because you cannot specifically target different parts of our brain. We can, as a whole, challenge our brain by engaging in challenging and new activities. And so we do have a question about, will the PowerPoint be made available? And you will get a PDF version of the PowerPoint slides via Julia. And that has more of sort of the different links associated with it. And so again, if you have questions, please let me know in the chat. But at the moment, I'm going to start to move on beyond the interwebs and out of the virtual world into some things that are a bit more tangible. And while we still use technology, they offer a bit more of a real experience. And so these are going to be some gadgets that we can use to help boost our brain and support individuals who are living along the dementia journey. So the first one that you see on the slide there is a robotic cat. And this might not be something that everyone thinks of, but companion animals, and there are robotic dogs, cats, there's even a seal, can provide immense amounts of comfort and companionship for individuals along the dementia journey without the hassle of a litter box. So if anyone is supporting someone on the dementia journey, this can be a good avenue to help provide a relaxing and calming tool. And this can be helpful if people are experiencing any levels of anxiety, confusion, or aggression. These pets can help to combat the feelings of loneliness and give people a sense of purpose that we all might feel when we are living, and that we all may feel when we're caring for a pet. But again, sort of without that burden of supporting a real life cat that wants to go out in the middle of the night or will continue to eat your plants. As I've mentioned earlier, and as you guys highlighted, reading is super great and fun. And I'm saying that because I do love it, and also because this is a presentation for a library. But we do know that reading can become frustrating. And at some points, our eyes get fatigued, or we would prefer to have a bit more of a passive experience. This is where audiobooks can help to overcome some of the challenges. Audiobooks can be accessed on specific devices like a Kindle or a Kobo, or again, through an app or website. You can also find audiobooks or e-magazines or e-books through the Ajax Public Library. These can be a great way to access content for free, so your library is never ending. There's also ways to access books online in a large font. This can again help to reduce certain frustrations that we may feel with pastimes, as maybe we start to have sort of eye fatigue, or even just that screen fatigue where those numbers or those letters seem really small. Making use of, rather than having that screen fatigue, utilizing technology to improve our experience. I also have put virtual reality on here because sometimes we get questions about it, and virtual reality is an amazing technology. And there are various standalone systems that can be used on an individual basis. And sort of some of the devices are quite expensive, but they can provide an at-home virtual reality experience. And while there's been a lot of research related to their use, and there have been some studies that have shown that they've been really engaging for individuals, if you're interested, I would encourage you to do some research, as the systems can be expensive to start. But I wouldn't let people shy away from the idea of utilizing technology to create an immersive experience. And while virtual reality is quite obvious. There's also other ways you can do armchair travel. And again, I think this is offered through the EdX Public Library. Or you can go online and go on Google Maps or websites like 360 Cities or Air Pano, and you can see some wonderful panoramic shots and feel a little bit like you're visiting those places. And we did have a question about the robotic pets. And so the cost of these pets do range from approximately $40 up to, I think, $185. The cat that is on the screen now, I believe, sells for I want to say $65, and that's from joyforall.com. And I can send specific links for where you would purchase a pet like that in the follow-up email that Julia will send out, because they are quite fun. I have had an opportunity to engage with these cats, and they're great. And so we've got some more questions, which is great. And I'm going to segue into gadgets for communication, because oftentimes we want to upkeep our vocabulary, and we want to push ourselves, or we want to be able to help support individuals who might be losing their communication skills. For those of us that are looking to advance our communication, you might be looking into different apps that boost vocabulary, whether it's an app to learn a new language or an app like Elevate that helps to broaden your vocabulary. And I will say once again that these apps can be great to help us to engage our brain in different ways and sort of build up that cognitive reserve. With apps like those, it is best if that can be applied into your everyday language to really emphasize the benefits. But they do all help to promote that challenging of our brain to think a little bit harder. But that only does work if you do challenge yourself, rather than sort of keeping things along in a settings that you don't feel completely engaged, but you make it sort of easy for yourself. Kind of equate it to, and this is probably more a habit of my generation, putting a GPS on even when you know where you're going. Sometimes we want to find ways to make life a little bit harder so we can use our brain. And certain apps like that help us to challenge ourselves. For individuals who might have challenge with communications, let's say if they're on the dementia journey or they're experiencing any type of cognitive impairment, talking can become challenging. And so we encourage the use of visual connections. And so this might mean that you choose to have a Zoom call over a phone call because you have that visual connection. You can see whom you're talking to. You can also help to utilize different technologies on devices themselves. You can use features like talk to text to allow someone who maybe has lower digital literacy or who isn't able to type out their thoughts to be able to speak them and then communicate with individuals in a way that is easier for them to communicate back. This system also tends to work in the opposite direction, where someone can have a text read out to them. And this can allow for a smoother two-way conversation between oftentimes different generations or between different people in different times when a two-way conversation wouldn't work. If you are supporting someone who's living with dementia or an older adult who may have hearing, vision, or cognitive impairment, I would recommend accessing the FamilyLinit.com, and I'm going to type that into the chat so everyone has it. It is a platform that is specifically designed to help support older adults in communications with intergenerational communications. It, as an app, allows for translation of different messages. It allows talk to text and text to talk, as well as the uploading of pictures to help to facilitate further engagement. And so the link for that app has been typed into the chat and will be available in the follow-up email. If you're still finding challenges in communication, and this could be because of hearing loss or because everyone's wearing a mask and it's really hard to hear people, because that is definitely a struggle that I think everyone can empathize with. There are different tools. Pictured on the screen here is a pocket talker, which is a form of personal amplification device that allows individuals to have more meaningful conversations by supporting those with lower hearing capacity. This can be used for someone who might not be at the stage where they need hearing aids or don't frequently need hearing aids, but they do find themselves in situations where they're having challenges hearing. To learn more about this devices and other hearing supporting specific devices, I would recommend going to the Canadian Hearing Society website. On that website, you can also see different devices like the telephone with pictures on it. As I mentioned priorly, having that visual communication can be really important to help engage people in a conversation if they know whom they're speaking with and they have that sort of visual cue. There's also phones available that have sort of an expanded range of volumes that they will go to. If you're at a point with someone where communication is quite challenging and visual cues are needed are being relied on more heavily, you can look into something that's called a talking mat, and that's also pictured on the screen here. And this is a system that can help to support effective communications through the use of a visual map of what is the conversation is being engaged with. So you can see how there'd be different cue cards for the different topic that's being different topic of conversation, and that can help someone have a more fluid conversation using those visual cues. To learn more about talking mats, you can go to talkingmats.com and look up dementia-related supports. To all those that said exercise was their favorite fun at the beginning, yay. I am quite biased because I think it was mentioned that I did do a degree in kinesiology. And so I am a big fan of being physically active. Not only is being physically active fun, again, it also has brain boosting benefits, since we know that exercise helps to improve cardiovascular system, as well as our blood flow to our brain. We know that any aerobic exercise has been shown to recruit new blood vessels into the brain, and increased blood flow to the brain helps to optimize the connections within that system. And while we know that a lot of gyms have been closed and physical activity avenues have been closed, there are still ways using online resources to connect and stay active. As we've already heard by some people who are here tonight, going out for a walk is fantastic and it's finally nice enough to do so. But if you're looking for something to challenge yourself a little bit more and you would like to do it from the comfort of your own home, I would recommend looking into some different online resources, such as the Canadian Centre for Activity and Aging, which is a research institute associated with Western University in London, Ontario. And they have structured online classes and videos that are designed by individuals who are trained in seniors fitness. The YMCA also runs a program called The Bright Spot. They offer, once again, content that is tailored for older adults and provides targeted instructions that is safe for individuals to engage with. And they offer a variety of intensities, from sort of a more gentle chair-based classes to slightly higher intensity classes with small weights or water bottles. And these can all be great ways to have fun and feel connected with individuals while also getting them from a trusted source. And as I said, there is an abundance of options online, which can sometimes lead to some less than stellar quality things. So if you are looking on, let's say, YouTube, or doing a general search for exercise classes, I would be wary of sort of looking into who is producing the content. Looking for that credible sources like the Bright Spot or the Canadian Centre for Activity and Aging can be ensured that you're utilizing the most appropriate sources online. I'd also love to hear from you of how you guys are staying active throughout all of the pandemic and how you ensure that your brain is staying active by keeping your body active. And so you can type those into the chat and we can maybe talk about them later. And I will say, because again, everyone says, what's the best activity to be doing? We do recommend any aerobic exercise that can be done at a fairly fast pace, as well as all older adults should also be engaging in balance and strength training, ideally twice a week. But for the most brain boosting benefits, I would recommend dancing, as it requires a fair amount of cognitive awareness to follow the steps and follow the music. And it tends to get your heart rate quite up, so it can be a very good aerobic exercise. And then it's also just a lot of fun, which can help to be a great stress reliever. And so yes, Edith is going line dancing. Yay. And the Canadian Ballet also has classes. So again, that's a really good, credible source to find fantastic courses. We've got some Zumba and belly dancing. So I love the dancing again, going for walks. And yeah, as it was mentioned, walking is a really great, or exercising as a whole can be great to help to regulate your sleep. So again, we're seeing those multi benefits. So we know that being active helps us to sleep well, and both of those have brain boosting effects. Just in case we needed more motivation to go out for our walks. And so while we do everything online, as I've mentioned all of these great resources that are available, I do also want to touch on some of the, I'm going to say, darker parts of being online, and that there are people out there that, because we are all depending more on utilizing things online, there is a increasing rate, and this is cited by the Canadian Fraud Agency, that there have been more scams and frauds. And someone who's online that is looking to scam or fraud someone is often looking for personal details. And it can be quite easy to fall into a trap and can potentially become in an unfortunate situation. And so I'm going to highlight a few tips of how we can ensure that we're staying safe online. And my first tip is, like with most things in life, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So if there's all of a sudden an email where if you fill out a 30-second survey, you're going to get a $50 gift card, that doesn't quite add up. Oftentimes, you may also get an email asking you to update your account details for a bank or the CRA. And I want to make it aware that the bank or CRA will never ask for confidential account information or sensitive information online. Banking are not allowed. That is definitely a fraud. And if you do receive an email from your bank and you're saying, well, this looks really credible, do some due diligence. Check it out. Call the bank. Say, hey, I got an email asking for this. Banks will always ask for verification or sensitive information via the phone, because that is a more secure platform rather than doing it online. And sometimes we also want to make sure that we're closing pop-up windows immediately. So sometimes you find that you open new websites and you get a pop-up, and those pop-ups are trying to get you to click on them because they often lead to the download of malware. And so we want to make sure that we close those immediately and they don't have an opportunity to get onto our computers. In that same vein, and similar to the vein that I was speaking about earlier, of thinking about the credibility of websites. Not all websites are as credible as others. We want to look for that, what I have highlighted on the slide, the HTTPS. At the beginning of any website, that S shows that it's secure. So if we're ever on a website, we want to avoid downloading anything from a website that doesn't have that S. And in general, if we're going to be downloading content from a website, we really want to know what kind of website this is. So if this is a Government of Canada website, with oftentimes things that end in .org, that's going to be more secure than a website saying the best brownies you've ever had.com. I mean, it could be a very legitimate bakery, but thinking about looking for some different cues on the website of whether or not it is legitimate before we take any steps to enter any information on that website, or if we download any content. We also want to have an awareness that not all Wi-Fis are created equally. This means that, and this was more applicable before the pandemic, but if you're out and about and you're connecting to public Wi-Fi, such as Tim Hortons, it is not as secure as maybe your home network. You can think about it very similar to if you wouldn't talk about it at Tim Hortons, you probably shouldn't do it on their Wi-Fi. So if you're not going to talk about your banking information in a public place like that, you probably shouldn't be doing your online banking on their Wi-Fi network. This is because these Wi-Fis are not as secure, and hackers can go in through that Wi-Fi network and then connect to your device through that connection. So if you're out and about, consider taking a little bit of extra caution if you're going to enter any sensitive information or personal details on any public Wi-Fi. When we're looking at any potential, and we're going to do an example of this, but looking at different spam emails and trying to identify, well, what is a spam and what can I trust? One key thing to look out is to have a little bit of healthy skepticism and to trust your instincts. We all know when something seems a little bit off. Maybe there's spelling errors, or the email doesn't quite add up, or they're asking information that just doesn't make sense. And so I'm going to ask right now if there's any questions related to online safety and security you guys have on the top of your mind that I could hopefully address to help you feel more secure when navigating an online space. We have a question of giving 3-digit numbers on the back of credit cards. So that would be the CVV number. And I would avoid making online purchases on a public Wi-Fi. The CVV number isn't a password, but it is still information that you don't need your bank password to make an online purchase, but you do need that number. So as a personal precaution, I don't usually do online shopping when I'm on a public Wi-Fi. I do that at home. It also keeps me from doing impulse buys if I'm out and about. If you are going to be doing an online purchase and you are going to be on a public Wi-Fi, again, making sure that you're doing it through a site that is legitimate. So looking for things that are ending in .org, .gov. Are there any other questions related to online safety and how to support your online safety when navigating through the virtual world? Because of all the reasons I have said, that there are fantastic resources, and I don't want to hold anyone to feel as though they can't access those because of some of the hesitancy. But we do know that there is certain caution that needs to be taken. And so on this slide, I have for you an email, and I would like to quiz, or not quiz, but I would like to ask all of you, what is your opinion of this email? And is there anything that is causing you to do a double take? So you can type this into the chat, and you don't have to type in sort of like everything, but if you can just take a look at it, and is there anything that your gut instinct says, to? Because I can tell you that I have received this email, and maybe you have as well. Our email is very similar. So the address on the top left of the screen, get my highlighter. So yeah, we're seeing that this email, why is Canada Post sending me an email from force@sharepointmonk.org? Librarian is correcting the grammar. So yeah, we're seeing this dear client, Rob. That doesn't look very professional. I know Canada Post is quite busy right now, but you think they'd have automated that. What else are we looking at? So dear client, Rob, we noticed a parcel was left at our office and the address on file keeps showing wrong address. We hereby advise you to get the receipt of the parcel and verify the correct address for us so we can bring you your parcel. There we go. How did they find my email address? And that's a great question, because at what point did we give Canada Post our email? And if the package has my email within the file, then it probably has my address. So why are they just not sending this to my address? And so, yeah, it's sort of like the content itself doesn't make sense. We can also see at the top here that it is a little unsecure email address. And sometimes they can copy paste logos in. And then just some other concept of sort of like, what is the purpose of this? Why would Canada Post not know where my address is? And this concept of Canada Post asking you to advertise to verify your address. And so clicking on that would get you to enter personal information. Or sometimes it's just clicking on a box will then let malware into your device. We can also think that if we were sent an email from Canada Post, it would probably be in English as well as in French, if this is a Government of Canada agency. And so while they do different things to try to make things look more legitimate with different logos, you guys all noticed a couple key things that didn't quite add up. And we can use this same sort of a breakdown when we're looking at any kind of email that we get that just doesn't quite seem right. I know one email that I got quite recently was telling me that I had been selected to receive a COVID vaccine, and I just had to click on this to book my appointment. And understanding that there are lots of people out there that recognize that these are really sensitive topics. Everyone's very keen to get a vaccine and would potentially jump at the chance. But taking that moment to think, well, this isn't how the vaccine rollout is occurring. So I should probably take that moment of pause. And the more you looked at the email, the more you realized that it didn't quite add up. And specifically, they were asking for health card information, and this was not through a validated system. So sometimes having that little bit of healthy caution. And so I want to say thank you. Or if anyone had any other comments about that email or any other spam that they have received that they would want to share to help to educate others, please feel free to type that in the chat. I think it's really good for people to feel comfortable talking about these things, that we can make sure we have open conversations. So that if someone does get an email that they say doesn't quite add up, you'd feel comfortable asking a colleague or a friend saying, hey, I got this email. Can you be another set of eyes on it? And also highlighting that if you have enjoyed today's presentation, but we're thinking the entire time, man, this would be so much better if it was in French, we do have services available in French. For those that are on the caregiver journey, we also offer programs by the Enhanced Care Ontario Ontario Care Partner Program. These are evidence-based programs that are delivered by a registered psychotherapist. There are 3 different versions, a Teach, Cares, and Mindfulness group. If you are interested in learning more about those, please check out our website at alzheimersdurham.com. If you are interested in learning more about supporting individuals along the dementia journey, or just about other things, we do have our upcoming Options for Care series starting in June. And this program is going to dive into navigating the healthcare system and looking for options within supporting someone living with dementia. We are going to be discussing long-term care, adult day programs, how to transition through different points of care, as well as hearing from a rep from the Central East LHIN on registering for further support and care. And so with that, thank you very much. And I'd like to open the floor for any questions.